franktalks.com.
All right, so tonight our first guest, Frank Kermit. He has a BA and an MA. He is a relationship coach and best-selling author. He teaches men and women about emotional needs for loving, both in sex, love, and dating, and all kinds of relationships. Frank Kermit is an author of many books and audio programs. He also produces and hosts an internet radio show, runs online relationship advice forums, and publishes Frank Talks, relationship columns in magazines, newspapers, and blogs. He's available for personalized coaching, and his book, Everything Out of Her Mouth, is a test and has been #1 on Lulu.com in the sex and relationships category for 3 years, from 2008 to 2011. And his website is www.franktalks.com if you'd like to check out and see what he looks like while you're talking to us. Okay. So that's there for you.
Let me be frank. Let's be frank.
Yeah.
Let me be frank with you.
Yes. I'm sure he's heard them all.
Yeah?
Ask him. Yeah.
Frank, are you on?
I'm here.
Awesome. Well, we're glad to have you tonight. If we could have you just speak up a tiny bit. We're getting a little low on volume on you, and we want to make sure everybody can hear all the wonderful words that are going to come out of your mouth. So, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad to be here.
I am super excited as well. So I've had a great opportunity to become friends with you through social media. I just love that we have all these different kinds of technology in the world where we can build relationships no matter where we are, and location, time, whatever. And I absolutely love it. And so we've had this great opportunity to, connect in business since we both do similar things. And, I'm really curious. A lot of people, they always want to know how I got into this business. And I always tell them how, I had this really odd track of coming from law enforcement into relationship building. And I'm curious about how you got into this business.
Well, let me start by saying that this was the furthest thing from my mind. This is not at all the career path that I thought I was going to have. I was aiming for a career path in the world of television in the business and legal affairs side of things.
Definitely different.
Very much so. Unfortunately, I went through some very bad experiences in my life where I reached a point that I said I have to learn how to make relationships work or I'm going to end it all.
Oh, wow.
So let's starting off back in high school. I got stood up at my senior prom.
Oh, my daughter just went to a prom on Saturday with a friend of a friend who didn't have a date. So my daughter wanted to guarantee that this boy didn't go alone. So she dolled all up and went with them and had a fabulous time. So I'm so glad now that my child did this, so she didn't have to have this young man have an experience like you did. It sucks to be stood up for prom.
Your daughter is an angel. Okay?
Thank you.
Your daughter is really an angel for doing that.
And she's cuter than caboodles, too.
Yeah, she is.
I'm so glad to hear that because, I've never actually talked with I've talked to girls who've been stood up for prom. So did you, was everything all set to go and she stood you up last minute?
Everything was all set to go up until maybe about an hour or so. Everybody was meeting at my house.
Oh, wow.
All of our friends. She just didn't show up. And the story behind that was you have to reserve seats at the senior prom.
Okay.
And when my graduating class found out that I was actually bringing a girl to the prom, she was a girl from another school, it prompted a number of class discussions, including the teachers, who were saying, Frank has a date? Is this his girlfriend? I didn't even know Frank had a girlfriend. I didn't know Frank had a date. Who is this girl? It was just really an embarrassing, horribly humiliating experience. Because I thought, I'm going to show all of them. And, of course, I show up alone.
Wow. And I'm glad that you still went and you were there with your friends even though you were embarrassed and humiliated. I read recently in the news that there was a young girl who spent over $1,000 on dress and all the regalia for prom, and wherever she goes to school, she got stood up. She knew a couple days before prom, and the archdiocese of their school, connected with their religious school, said that you're not allowed to go to prom by yourself and won't let her attend her prom.
Wow.
That's ridiculous.
To me, that just says a really bad image that if you don't have a man, you can't go to prom. That's not a very healthy, you have to have a date or you're nothing. You're not allowed to leave your house.
Wow.
That's just pretty crappy. So I don't even care if he's a good guy or a nice guy. You just got to find anybody, get any loser to take you, and it's okay. I don't know. I didn't think that was a very positive message. Oh my gosh, that would be so horrible. That would make me cry.
It was a horrible experience, and it really left me very jaded.
Wow.
A few years later, I lost my fiancée to one of my best friends.
Really?
And the story behind that was every time I was having problems with her, because we had an on-again, off-again relationship, I would go to him, and I would talk to him about it, which was a mistake. Because he would tell me to my face, Frank, I don't know how you put up with her. I don't know how you tolerate her. I could never date a girl like that.
Well, maybe he couldn't date her, but it sounds like he could do other things with her. Thanks a lot.
No, they ended up together.
Okay.
They ended up in a relationship afterwards.
Wow. All right, well, I guess they could be miserable together.
There you go. And the final straw was spending about 2 years with a girl, paying for her dinners, spending all kinds of time with her, being her friend, because I told her I really liked her, and she says she can't date me because we are of different race, religions, and cultures. But I still hung out there hoping she would change her mind.
Wow.
2 years into that, she announces to me she has a boyfriend, and she's had him for the past 6 months, never told me, and she says that she's going to marry him. I'm disappointed, but I figure, well, at least she stuck to her principles. And that's when she tells me that he's not the same race and religion and culture as she was.
Nice.
When that happened, that was it. That was the final straw.
Wow.
And the question I asked her is, I don't understand. You told me that that's why we couldn't be together. And lo and behold, now you're with him. So what was different? What's different between me and him? What has he got that I don't got? And here's what she told me. She says, I didn't plan for it to happen. It just happened. He seduced me. That night, driving home, my hands were shaking so bad I had to pull over to the side of the road. And I just had to sit there with my own rage. By the time I did get home, I was still infuriated because I said, okay, this keeps happening to me. Now, the first time, the prom, I can say, yeah, well, she was just a bad person. The second time with my fiance, oh, well, I was too trusting, and they're both just really bad people. But when it happened to me a third time, that's when I had to take responsibility. That's when I said, look, the common denominator in every relationship I've ever had is me.
I'm not laughing at what you said. I'm laughing because that you and I obviously have a lot in common because I wrote that and that's in my bio for my personal story in my book. As I said, I finally looked at all these bad relationships and realized the most common denominator in all of the failed relationships I ever had was me.
I actually find a lot of people in our industry have gone through a similar story.
Mm-hmm.
They realize that if you want to fix the rest of your life, you have to fix yourself first.
Right.
And it's that moment of taking responsibility to fix it that allows us to really take a shot to the ego,
Sure.
put the ego on the shelf,
Right.
start the healing process.
Oh, sure. I also found it very interesting that, when you were talking about that last girl, is that, she said he seduced me. And I meet so many women who admit that they really are looking for the guy who seduces them, that, plays the game, the bad boy stereotypically. And then I meet all these really, really, really nice men that are like, what's wrong with me? Why won't they stay with me? I'm everything that they're looking for. And I'm their friend. I take care of them. I have money. They have, I love their family. They seem like the white knight in shining armor, so to speak. But the girls are really looking for somebody a little dangerous who's pushing them, who entices them and seduces them in a totally different way. So it's very interesting.
Well, there's two things I want to say about that. The first thing is there's a difference between what people say they like, what they respond to.
Correct.
Nice guys listen to what women say they like.
Right.
Guys like seducers focus on what women respond to.
Right, and that's why they're very successful at it.
Exactly. The second thing I want to say is when she used that term, he seduced me, I decided that night I was going to learn to become the seducer, or I was going to kill myself.
Wow.
So my motivation,
you put some pretty strong restraints on yourself there.
Well, it was all or nothing.
Yeah.
And the reason I was so devastated is because I had achieved a number of awards and degrees and appearances in the media in my profession, but I had nobody to share it with.
Sure.
So it wasn't a case of, well, everything else in my life sucked. It's, look, I'm on a great career path. I've worked my way into positions that were amazing that I should never have been able to get originally. I've got all this going for me, nobody to share it with.
Mm-hmm.
It made the rest of my life meaningless. What's the point of getting into shape and making lots of money and being super successful if I'm always going to end up alone?
Sure.
So that's why nothing else became important to me, and I said, I'm really just going to kill myself because there's no value to my life without love.
Wow.
Now, here's the thing. If I knew then what I know now,
Mm-hmm.
all the negative associations with the word seducer, I never would have used the term seducer.
Sure.
But that is my past. That is the path that I took. I'm glad I took it because I wouldn't be who I am today. But I don't identify as a seducer anymore.
Well,
but it was a necessary path to get me where I am today.
And I do find that with a lot of clients and other people I've met throughout the years is like they'll go from one extreme to the other for a short time to like try to it's like they're trying to make up for or to learn, and so that is common, and so and then they come to this realization of like, oh man, there's another world out there, and I was like overzealous. Now I can have something even better than all of that. And we will talk more about that with you when we come back from our bottom of the 10 o'clock hour break. So we have a couple of songs, some announcements, and when we come back, you'll have more with your host, Andrea Adams Miller, the leading international authority on healthy relationships in business and in the bedroom, www.igniteyourrelationships.com. And our guest tonight, Frank Kermit, www.franktalks.com, and we'll be talking more about relationship building and what you can do to improve your relationships in your life here at Sex Talk Live 88.1 FM in Bowling Green, Ohio.
If you need help with your relationships, my buddy Frank here has got some tips. Just go to franktalks.com. His advice is better than your mom's, 'cause he knows what you are going through, 'cause Frank has been there too. So log on to franktalks.com, to franktalks.com.
And we're back here with Sex Talk Live. This is Andrea Adams Miller, www.igniteyourrelationships.com. And we're speaking tonight with Frank Kermit from www.franktalks.com. And when we left on break, before break, we were listening to the horrible situation that happened in Frank's life, which, although it was awful, now has led him to really be able to apply that information and knowledge and give that information or share that information with others so that they can improve their lives to maximize their relationships. So what I'd like to next to Frank is to talk about, we know now that, you help people, you've written these books, you do this great information and you help people. And I want to talk about the theories behind what you're talking about as, specifically, you talk about the emotional needs of a man. So I want to know more about, your theories and how you came to learn these different models and how that you apply them within your business.
Okay, well, the first thing I did after that night where I made the decision, figure this out or die, I started seeking out mentors.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up engaging with a number of people from traditional relationships, not so traditional relationships, and tried to figure out, okay, who has it figured out? And in learning from all these different people, I met some people that I would never again invite into my living room. and I met some really great people.
Sure.
One of the great people I met, his name is Dr. Amir Sambongi.
Mm-hmm.
Website is truelifeskills.com. He's the first person I ever heard coin the phrase emotional need. And learning from him, he taught me that behind everything that a woman says is an emotional need being expressed. The question is, what is that emotional need, and what do you do with it once you figure that out?
And that's exactly what we want to hear.
Okay. For some reason, I just had an instinct for this, and I later learned it's because I had a number of the emotional needs normally associated for women.
Okay.
I had a fear of abandonment. I had a need for drama. I was panicked about my own reputation, which made me afraid to sometimes go after the people that I wanted to be with. So I had a really in-tune understanding of what a woman was going through emotionally, and that was part of my problem. The fact is that because I had those emotional needs of women, I would turn women off.
So I've seen that as well, where both in women and men, where they either seem so needy, then the person's like, I can't even start to be in a relationship with you. You have so many expectations for me, or like within minutes, they're talking about future 10 years down the road, and you're like, well, wait a minute, I don't even think I know how to spell your last name yet, and different things like that, where that can happen at times, where that emotional needs, I see that you're right, in both men and women, and it is really interesting to hear it and how they express it as well. So I'll let you say more.
Okay, well, let's look at an example, like fear of abandonment.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it perfectly all right and normal for a woman to express fear of abandonment? Well, she could be left pregnant. She could have a child, and then he picks up and leaves. So there better be something special about their relationship together that's going to keep him around.
Okay.
Now, what happens when a man expresses fear of abandonment? He's not going to be an attractive man, because that's what makes him too needy. Part of the man's obligation is to be assertive in a relationship. Well, somebody who fears abandonment can't be assertive, because he's always going to be petrified. But what if nobody follows me? What if nobody goes along with what I'd like to do?
Okay.
Women like a man who is assertive, who's going to go after what he wants. But a man who constantly fears abandonment is unable to go after what he wants because he's too afraid to make people angry and have them leave him.
Okay.
So this is a wonderful paradox where if a man starts to relate to a woman on an emotional level, saying, oh, I understand your fear of abandonment, I feel it too, that's the very thing that will turn her off, even though she may like him. But she won't respect him like a man.
I hear that frequently in relationships. I mean, of course, I want to give the misnomer that sometimes there are people who are attracted to that. However, over the scope of, at least in my practice, what I've experienced, however, a majority of women are looking for someone who can take care of things, that isn't needy, doesn't really need them, it's kind of like they are attracted to someone who's completely self-sufficient and goes about their business and doesn't have to have them, but chooses them. And so now all of a sudden they feel important and worthy and sexually excited because that person wants me, not because he has to have me, because he just desires me and wants me in his life.
Because there's something special and unique about her that he can't get from any other woman, and that's why, regardless of what happens, she's going to get older, she's going to become less attractive with age, maybe her body's going to change because she's had his children, he's still going to hold her in such high regard that he won't abandon her.
Well, I'll say that I know a lot of women who feel that way, so you're all along the path so good so far. So what else more would you like to share with us about that?
Okay, well, I like coming up with one or two rules that will just basically explain exactly what my theory is.
Okay.
Now, when I started this process, I adopted a rule: I will date everybody and anybody. So I dated women from all age groups, all backgrounds, all religions, you name it, I did it. And I found one unifying theme. So here it is. A woman can play only one of two roles in any man's life. She's either a mother or she's a lover. she cannot be both.
Thank you. I say that all the time. I always say I have a very small percentage of people I've come across in my business who actually want to have sex with their parents. So quit parenting your partner because they don't need a parent, they need a partner.
Exactly. Now, when I was doing this dating, I ended up having, I went from no sex for 5 years to having 5 lovers at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So I would test my theory with each girl just to see, okay, what's going to happen now? And I, of course, in testing my theories, there was always a chance they would leave, and I was looking for consistent results.
Okay.
And what I found is that every time I halted the mothering instinct, the woman, even if she would get angry with me, would still find me attractive. So I'm going to give you just a simple example.
Okay.
One of my rules is, if you're coming over to my place, you are not allowed to do the dishes, you're not allowed to do the housework. I would actually have women sometimes say, oh, here, I'll do your laundry for you. And I would say, no, stop, you're not my mother. This is not what you're here for. Now go in the living room and make us a couple of drinks. I'll join you in a second.
Well, I was speechless for a moment because both DJ Daywalker, my cohort, and I were looking at each other like, we like you already because we don't have to come over to your house and do anything.
Exactly.
Would you like a net drink?
But, I'm working on a book right now, and it's called Hire a Wife, Marry a Hottie. And so it's all about, if you want a wife, you should somebody to cook and clean and chauffeur and plan your calendar and, iron your clothes, and you should, hire a laundromat, you should get a house cleaner, you should get a chauffeur, you should get people for those jobs, and then marry the woman who can actually just be your wife and your sexual partner, your fun friend, be that person instead of all of a sudden having all these jobs to do. So I'm buying into this quite readily. So please go on.
Okay, whenever I would halt the mothering instinct, where a woman would try to give me advice and I'd say, stop, you're not my mother. I'm going to figure this out on my own. The women would get angry. You're such a jerk. I'm only trying to show you how much I care. Why do you have to be like that? However, give it a little bit of time, and they start being more affectionate to me because I'm halting the mothering instinct. This is why I believe that when a woman says she wants a man who's a challenge, it isn't because she's looking for a jerk. It's because she's looking for a man who is going to challenge her mothering instinct and halt it so that she, by default, can feel sexually attracted to him.
It's very interesting.
That's what a man who is a challenge does. He's always challenging her every time she tries to do something mothering to him.
I'm actually almost speechless. DJ Daywalker, you had a thought?
I mean, I'm listening intently here. I'm trying to think back, with examples of my own.
He's old. He has to think really far back.
Yeah, I am old. But, just kind of going over in my mind as you're talking, past experiences. So.
It's kind of funny, too, because I was trying to think of, me and how I've been in the past. I'm a nurturer.
No, you're the motherly type.
I suppose.
Yeah.
I do like to care. However, I've changed as I've gotten older. I like to be taken care of now, and I don't really want to do anything for anybody else. That came out wrong, but I still do a lot for other people, but I have learned not to be so focused on that, and not to do things for people that they can do themselves, or that there's somebody else to do that, and been able to replace those needs to take care of people in a different way. That if I want to take care of them, that I love them, pay attention to them in different ways rather than like feeding them or folding their laundry. So yeah.
Well, what you said was so key. You said doing something for them that they can do for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the resentment in women builds up over time. One of the things that I see in my practice is that I'll deal with a couple that's been together for a long time. And what has happened in the course of the relationship is that they started off strong. They started off very much in love. And the man was doing his job, addressing her emotional needs, and she did not feel like his mother. Over the course of the relationship, however, sometimes it's because they have children, so she starts mothering the children and then starts mothering him as well in that process. Men don't realize that this is a problem. Because for a man, one of his emotional needs is to be able to recognize femininity. And he interprets feminine behavior sometimes as courteous behavior. So the woman starts doing things for him that he should be able to do for himself. The woman starts taking a more active role in planning their social life when he needs to be the one to say, hey, I'm going to take you out to dinner and I'm going to surprise you. I'll decide what's going to happen tonight. You just enjoy the ride. Over the course of time, she's becoming more and more resentful because she's feeling like his mother. He doesn't see it as a problem, however, because for a man, his emotional needs are defined as she's either my ally or she's my enemy. So whether it is a mother figure or a lover figure, for a man, they both count as his ally.
Now,
over the course of the relationship, the resentment builds. Then one day she just is so frustrated with him. She no longer feels the same passion for him. She no longer feels the draw to him. He doesn't see what the problem is because in his mind, well, she's being courteous to me. She's being giving, and I'm going to accept that.
You know, that makes me think all of a sudden of Janet Jackson's song, ever since your dancing feet are always on my couch. Good thing that I cook or I'd starve to death. You know, because, you know, that, yeah, they like stop because all of a sudden she's taken over and they are cool with it because food comes and the plans are had and they just kind of like step out of their life. Yeah. And then they wonder how come they don't have any control on anything.
Frank, don't you feel, though, that some of this is kind of, not bred, but nurtured, and this is the way that some of the women are trained? I mean, especially in my days, you know, my mother took care of my father. He came home, she'd have the coffee, she'd have the supper ready, and she'd have the laundry folded, done, because that was kind of their role, and that's how what the daughter would see, you know, and the mother would tell the daughter, you know, someday you're going to have to take care of your man, and the grandmother would tell the daughter that too. So I think it was kind of bred into them that this is the way it is. You know, you do the dishes, you take care of your man when he comes home, you know, you make sure supper's on the table, and you know, because he's had a tough day at work.
Well, if that's how it is, then I want a wife, because
well, no, I mean, don't you agree
to
though?
Feed me and cook and clean and rub my feet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not now as much, but in my day. And my wife's mother and her father, I mean, were the same way. And unfortunately, the son came up that way too, expecting that from the woman.
Oh yeah, my grandmother does everything for my grandfather. And he doesn't know how to do it. And then she was sick once and needed him to make a bed out of the couch, and he had no clue what to do. And I always tease my husband. I'm like, I'm not doing that. You were smart enough to figure that out. You can do it.
Yeah, but you're from a later generation too.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, so yeah.
Definitely.
And so like what Frank is saying is he has to almost he has to deprogram them, so to speak, you know, to you know, this is the way it should be, or this is the way I like it. So is that right, Frank? Kind of?
Well, we have to be very clear here, because if we're going to compare generations past to what's going on today, you have to remember it's a completely different context. Back then, everybody had an assigned gender role. The guy went to work, he earned a living, that was his contribution to the household. Woman stayed home, took care of the household, spent a lot of time raising the children. That was her contribution. The jobs were divided. Gender roles were very set in place. Not so today.
Right.
The social norms that were in place back then to keep everybody in line, so that if a guy didn't feel like going to work and wanted to stay home with the kids and decided that he was better suited for that, he didn't have that option.
Right.
A woman who had the talent, the skill to go out and earn an even better living than her husband and wanted that opportunity, she didn't have that.
Correct.
If you look at some of the laws regarding adoption, it'll be very clear that back then, if a couple wanted to adopt a child, the mother had to stay at home.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you had social norms in place that didn't allow for that. And with those social norms in place, you don't have the options of saying, well, I'm not happy here, so I'm just going to pick up and leave. Let's look at today's situation. Gender roles have been redefined. Everybody now has equal rights. Now, men and women are not equal. They're different. But both genders have equal rights under the law. And because everybody now has equal rights under the law, the right of protection from violence, which is very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the way you define a human being. They have rights that protect them from violence. You've removed the social norms. Now everybody's trying to figure out, okay, now what do I do?
What I find that's so interesting is a lot of my couples that I work with, that I actually always tease with the husbands and the wives, like, when does your job stop? Because like one of them always assumes the majority of the parenting in the house, cleaning and so forth, whether it's the man or the woman. And I always say, like, one of you goes to work and then you're done, and the other one has all these other job responsibilities. And so there is no equal balance. It's completely off kilter balance. And then the other person's expected to do things like that is their job. And I'm like, well, tell them that you only work about 50 hours a week, and after that you have to get overtime and you're done. So you're just going to have to be done, because if they don't exert some control and create some balance so that they both are contributing to the other, especially if they both are working full time, or even for my parents who stay home all day, if that other parent doesn't step in and help, when is that parent? So from the time that their kids wake up to their kids go to sleep, or when their activities at home to clean or whatever, before and after that person is putting in way more than a normal time of day. There is no laying on the couch eating bonbons. That doesn't happen for most stay-at-home parents that I'm finding. Frank, we have about 5 more minutes, and so I wanted to make sure if there's some other points that you wanted to get to, that you have time to get to those too. So thank you so much for sharing what you have so far. I'm finding this fascinating.
Well, the only thing I would like to share is that we don't ever assume that everybody has healthy emotional needs.
Sure.
Men have emotional needs, women have emotional needs. Some of them are polar opposites, some of them are complementary.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people who have dysfunctional emotional needs, such as a deep-rooted fear of intimacy. Or sometimes they're drawn to an excessive need for things like drama, or an excessive need for control. These are dysfunctional emotional needs. So when someone is falling in love with another person, it doesn't mean that other person is right for them.
Correct.
Because that other person addresses his or her emotional needs. And if you end up in a dysfunctional relationship, it means that at your core, you have some dysfunctional emotional needs that the other person addressed, which is why you fell in love with them in the first place.
Right. I used to, I still do, admire Harville Hendricks, and he always talks about how, people are looking for that other person to fulfill the other half of them, to solve whatever it is isn't working for them in their own life. And I see that all the time. With what you're talking about, that unhealthiness of, I need somebody in my life who is like always making me feel like I'm going to be left, because I need that test constantly of whether you're going to be here tomorrow, I'm going to be miserable and horrible, and see if you're going to stay or not. I'm going to withdraw love and withdraw, affection, and see if you'll stick around and stay. It's like they're trapped in that cycle of drama that you mentioned too.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So as we're getting close to the end here, I like it that you call them Frankisms, and I would love to hear one of your best Frankisms.
One of my best Frankisms. Okay, one of the best Frankisms. I'm going to have to think here for a second. I know that we're running out of time here. How about my Frankism regarding the power of choice?
Okay.
One of the things I teach, especially when I'm dealing with people of this new generation who don't have the assigned gender roles that we talked about earlier.
Uh-huh.
Everybody has a choice, but the power of choice without any skill to know what to do with it can lead to a misery so great it's worse than a system of oppression that meets basic needs. It's great and wonderful that our generation right now has incredible amounts of choice. We can have any type of relationship structure we want, monogamous, not monogamous, alternative. We can have any kind of family structure we want. We can have anything we want. The problem is, all this choice, but absolutely no skills to know how to develop ourselves, how to go out there and find a partner, how to manage relationships. In the end, it means nothing. So instead of focusing on, wow, I have to make sure I always have my options open, I have a lot of choices, focus on the skills that you have. And if you want something that's outside of that skill set, develop that skill, develop yourself, self-actualize.
And I guess that's where we come to play.
Exactly.
If you can't do that on your own, you definitely need somebody to coach you and help you. I mean, that's why, the best ball players in the world have coaches. That's why the best speakers have coaches. That's why, doctors have mentors. And, everybody has somebody else that they can have a system with that, so they don't have to struggle and don't have to make it miserable. So if you're... Oh, go ahead.
All a coach is a guide that will lead you to yourself.
Awesome. Very much like that. And with that, we want to thank Frank Kermit for joining us tonight here at Sex Talk Live with your host, Andrea Adams Miller, the leading international authority on healthy relationships and healthy sexuality. And that's both great relationships in your business and in your bedroom. www.igniteyourrelationships.com, where I reveal the secrets to ignite that spark, fire, and passion through keynote speaking, books, and audio programs. And we want to thank our guest tonight, franktalks.com, if you would like to check out more information or follow up with him to find out what all the other great Frankisms he has, and to learn more about his books and products and see what he has in store for you. So thank you so much, Frank, for joining us. I'm looking forward to furthering our relationship and getting to be better friends and business acquaintances as well. And have a great, fabulous night, and we appreciate you calling in.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Need help with love, sex, dating, and relationship issues? Help from Frank Kermit, the best-selling author and Canada's most international relationship coach, is only a click away at franktalks.com. Coaching is available in person, by phone, and by Skype for singles, couples, and alternative lifestyles. franktalks.com.
franktalks.com